The chandelier crystals trembled above Caroline Hartley's head, scattering fractured light across the Pemberton ballroom like shattered ice. She stood at the precise midpoint between the potted palms and the refreshment table, a location she'd perfected over 8 seasons, close enough to appear present, distant enough to remain unnoticed. At 31, she had become a master of strategic invisibility. Another triumph for the Hartley beauties, Lady Ashford's voice carried across the marble floor. First Arabella securing Lord Weston, now dear Henrietta engaged to the Earl of Thornfield. Your aunt must be positively radiant. Caroline's fingers tightened around her champagne flute. Through the swirling dancers, she could see her youngest cousin, Henrietta, 19 and luminous in cream silk, accepting congratulations with practiced modesty. 6 weeks ago, Arabella had married at St. George's in a ceremony that left the Times correspondent searching for adequate superlatives. Both matches had been orchestrated with military precision by their mother, Caroline's Aunt Josephine, who had taken the Hartley sisters in hand when their own mother died, birthing a stillborn son. No one mentioned that Caroline was also a Hartley. No one ever did. Such a pity about the eldest, another voice murmured, deliberately loud enough to carry. Past her prime now, of course. I heard she refused Lord Denton years ago. Imagine the arrogance. Now look at her. Caroline had not refused Lord Denton. At 22, she'd been prepared to accept his proposal until Aunt Josephine had taken him aside at a garden party. Whatever had been said in that 10-minute conversation, Lord Denton had departed within the hour and married a baron's daughter that autumn. Caroline had never asked what leverage her aunt possessed. She'd learned early that Josephine Hartley collected secrets the way other women collected calling cards. The orchestra began a waltz. Caroline retreated further into the shadows, her dove-gray gown, Aunt Josephine's choice, always gray or brown, nothing that might draw attention from her cousins, blending with the wallpaper. She'd become remarkably good at disappearing in plain sight. Miss Hartley? The voice came from directly behind her, low and precise, with an edge that suggested its owner was unaccustomed to being ignored. Caroline turned and found herself facing a man whose presence seemed to contract the space around them. Tall, perhaps 40, with dark hair silvered at the temples and eyes the color of winter slate. His evening clothes were impeccably tailored, his bearing that of someone who'd never questioned his right to command any room he entered. She recognized him immediately. Everyone in London would. Alexander Thorne, 6th Duke of Greystone, controlled more land than some European principalities and possessed enough political influence to make or destroy governments. He'd been widowed 5 years ago when his duchess died in childbirth, taking their infant son with her. Since then, he'd become a figure of speculation and rumor, appearing at Parliament and essential state functions, but avoiding the marriage market with an icy determination that had discouraged even the most ambitious mothers. Your Grace, Caroline curtsied, confused. They'd never been introduced. I require your assistance with a matter of some delicacy. His gaze remained fixed on her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Would you walk with me? Every instinct screamed refusal. Women who disappeared into private corners with the Duke of Greystone, even overlooked spinsters, invited disaster. Yet something in his expression wasn't predatory. It was calculating, certainly, but also desperate in a way she understood intimately. The terrace, she said. It's visible from the ballroom windows. His mouth flickered with what might have been approval. Precisely adequate. The March air bit through her thin gown as they stepped outside. Through the glass, she could see her aunt watching them with narrowed eyes, already computing possibilities. The Duke positioned himself where they could be seen, but not overheard, his body angled to shield her from the worst of the wind. I'll be direct, Miss Hartley. I need a wife. He spoke as if discussing a business contract. Parliament convenes in 3 weeks to vote on the Reform Act amendments. My presence is critical. However, my late wife's family, the Beaumonts, have chosen this moment to challenge my fitness as guardian to my daughter Isabel. They claim a child of 7 requires a mother's influence, not a father consumed by political obligations. Caroline's breath misted in the cold air. I don't understand what this has to do with me. The Beaumonts are powerful. A court challenge would be complicated, lengthy, public. Something cracked through his composure. Actual fear. Isabel has already lost her mother. I will not allow her to be made a spectacle or removed from the only home she knows. Then marry. Caroline said, still baffled. Half of London's mothers would present their daughters tomorrow. I don't want a daughter. I have one. I want a wife intelligent enough to understand this is a strategic arrangement, not a romance. Someone who won't expect affection or make emotional demands. His eyes remained cold as January frost. Someone who has been overlooked long enough to appreciate what I'm offering. The insult landed with surgical precision. Caroline felt heat flood her cheeks despite the frigid air. How extraordinarily romantic, Your Grace. I'm not offering romance. I'm offering escape. He gestured toward the ballroom where her aunt was now in animated conversation with Lady Ashford, both women glancing toward the terrace. How many more seasons will you endure, watching your cousins celebrated while you're dismissed as the family charity case? How much longer before your aunt decides you're too expensive to maintain and suggests a position as a paid companion? Caroline's throat constricted. Just last week, Aunt Josephine had mentioned a widowed countess seeking an educated woman to read aloud and organize correspondence. The suggestion had been casual, exploratory. A warning. You know nothing about me, she managed. I know you're observant. You've been watching escape routes all evening. That doorway near the musicians, the servants' entrance behind the refreshment table. I know you're educated because you were reading Bentham's constitutional theory at the Willoughby Musicale last month. I also know, he paused, and something almost human entered his expression. I know what it means to be useful, but unvalued. And your daughter? Does she factor into this calculation? Isabel is why I'm making it. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. She needs stability and protection from her maternal grandparents' machinations. You would be her duchess, her guardian in social situations I cannot navigate. In return, you'd have position, independence, and a household of your own. I have 3 estates and a London residence. Choose anyone to make your primary home. I'll require your presence at necessary political functions, nothing more. No affection, no companionship, no marriage in any real sense. Precisely, he met her eyes without flinching. I'm offering you freedom, Miss Hartley. The price is a title and tolerance of my occasional presence. Most women in your position would consider that a bargain. Through the glass, Caroline saw Henrietta laughing, surrounded by admirers. Arabella's wedding had been a spectacle of joy and celebration. No one would celebrate Caroline's match. They'd whisper about desperation and last chances, but they'd also curtsy to her. Aunt Josephine would have to curtsy to her. I want control of my own finances, she heard herself say. Whatever marriage settlement is arranged, I want an independent income that cannot be revoked. The Duke's eyes glinted with something that might have been respect. Done. What else? Isabel, I won't be a stranger who shares her home. If I'm to be her guardian, I want the authority to make decisions about her education and upbringing. Within reason, agreed. Though I won't have her turned into a decorative fool, neither will I. Caroline drew a breath. How long do I have to decide? The Beaumonts file their petition Monday. I need an answer by Friday to have the banns read in time. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm not promising happiness, Miss Hartley. I'm promising purpose and protection. That's all I have to offer, and more than I've been offered before. The words tasted bitter and honest. I'll give you my answer Thursday evening. Send a note if you still require one. She didn't wait for his response before returning to the ballroom. Her aunt intercepted her immediately, fingers digging into Caroline's arm with enough force to bruise. What did Greystone want? To discuss his late wife's charity work. Apparently, my name was mentioned as potentially useful. The lie came easily after years of practice. Josephine's eyes narrowed with suspicion. But the orchestra had begun another waltz, and Henrietta was being led onto the floor by her new fiancé. The moment passed. Caroline endured another hour before pleading a headache and escaping to the carriage. As they rattled through London's gaslit streets, she watched her cousins chattering excitedly about Henrietta's wedding plans, their voices a familiar soundtrack to her invisibility. Caroline, you're not listening, Arabella said, pouting. I asked if you thought pearl trim or lace for the breakfast gown. Pearl, Caroline replied automatically, not caring. When they reached the Grosvenor Square townhouse, she retreated to her third-floor bedroom, the smallest in the family wing, hastily vacated for her at 16 when her father died and left her with nothing but debts. Aunt Josephine had taken her in with theatrical reluctance, ensuring everyone knew the sacrifice involved. Caroline lit a candle and retrieved the battered copy of Bentham she'd hidden beneath her mattress. The pages fell open to a passage she'd marked years ago. The question is not, can they reason? Nor can they talk, but can they suffer? She'd suffered silently for 15 years. The Duke of Greystone was offering her an escape that required only one sacrifice, the fantasy that someday someone might love her for herself rather than her utility. Caroline had stopped believing in that fantasy before her 20th birthday. She pulled out writing paper and began drafting her acceptance. There was no poetry in it, no romance, just clean, pragmatic terms. When she finished, she sealed it carefully and set it aside for Thursday's post. Then she opened her window and let the cold March air wash over her face, cleansing away the last remnants of foolish hope. Thursday, March 21st, 1867. The Duke of Greystone's response arrived by private messenger at 3 o'clock, precisely 12 hours after Caroline had sent her letter. Inside the heavy cream envelope was a single sheet covered in bold handwriting and a separate sealed document. Miss Hartley, your terms are acceptable. My solicitor has prepared the settlement agreement. Enclosed. Review with independent counsel if desired, though time constraints make extensive negotiation impractical. The banns will be read this Sunday. We'll marry by special license April 12th at Greystone Chapel. My daughter looks forward to meeting you next week. Greystone. No warmth, no pleasure, barely even courtesy. Caroline found it oddly reassuring. The settlement document was extraordinary. An annual income of £3,000 paid directly to her control. Use of Ashford Manor, a Gloucestershire estate with 40 rooms and extensive grounds. Pin money, household accounts, and a separate sum for charitable endeavors and personal investments. The only requirement was her presence at specified political and social functions, approximately 20 events per year. Caroline! Aunt Josephine's voice cut through her reading. Henrietta's dressmaker is here. She needs your opinion on the trousseau lace. Carolyn descended to find the drawing room in chaos, white fabric draped across every surface. Henrietta stood on a fitting platform, admiring herself in an ivory silk that cost more than Caroline's entire wardrobe. The dressmaker, Madame Laurent, was explaining construction techniques with the passion of an artist. What do you think? Henrietta asked, spinning to catch the light. Is it too much? It was glorious, extravagant, everything a bride deserved. It's perfect, Caroline said honestly. Good. Mama's ordered 6 more gowns for the wedding trip. Henrietta returned to her reflection, already dismissing Caroline from her attention. Caroline found her aunt in the morning room, reviewing invitation lists. Josephine looked up with the expression she reserved for unpleasant duties. The Greystone note? Business correspondence. Nothing significant. Don't lie to me. Josephine set down her pen with deliberate precision. I saw you speaking with him at the Pemberton ball. I know desperation when I see it, Caroline. What did you promise him? The moment stretched taut. Caroline thought of 15 years as the grateful dependent, the useful unmarried relation, the competent organizer of other people's joy. She thought of her own money, her own home, her own authority. I promised him nothing, Aunt. He promised me a great deal. Josephine went very still. Explain. We're to be married April 12th. The banns will be read this Sunday. Caroline placed the settlement document on the desk between them. I thought you should know before the announcement reaches the papers. Her aunt's face cycled through shock, fury, calculation, and finally a cold rage that made Caroline's stomach clench. You conniving little. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? Playing the martyr while plotting to steal the spotlight from Henrietta's season? I've stolen nothing. The Duke made his choice, because you manipulated him somehow. Greystone doesn't remarry. Everyone knows that. What did you do? Trap him in some compromising situation? Threaten scandal? Josephine stood, shaking with anger. You ungrateful creature. I took you in, raised you alongside my own daughters, and this is how you repay me? Caroline felt something crack open inside her chest, years of swallowed insults and diminishments rising like floodwater. You took me in because my father's debts would have tainted Arabella's prospects if I'd been left to manage alone. You've reminded me of your sacrifice every day since. Well, now I'm releasing you from that terrible burden. You think Greystone will make you happy? He's cold as winter and cares for nothing but his political career and that strange child. You'll be miserable, possibly, but I'll be miserable in my own home, with my own income, bearing a duchess's title. Caroline retrieved the settlement and turned toward the door. Tell Henrietta I wish her joy. I'll send a wedding gift, but I won't be attending. I'll be rather busy with my own preparations. She made it to her bedroom before the shaking started. Reaction, she told herself. Natural physical response to confrontation. Not regret, not fear, just chemistry. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Miss? The housemaid, Jenny, stood in the doorway wringing her hands. Your aunt says you're to pack your belongings. She wants you gone by tomorrow. Caroline had expected nothing less. Thank you, Jenny. Could you help me with the trunk? They worked in silence, folding Caroline's modest wardrobe into borrowed luggage. At the bottom of her wardrobe, she found the small rosewood box containing her mother's jewelry. The few pieces Josephine hadn't appropriated for Arabella and Henrietta. A pearl necklace, garnet earrings, a locket containing a miniature portrait of her parents on their wedding day. Her father looked young in the painting, optimistic. He'd lost his fortune to bad investments before Caroline turned 12, then his health to worry. Her mother had died still, believing things might improve. Neither had lived to see her reduced to dependent relation. Where will you go, miss? Jenny asked quietly. The Savoy Hotel, temporarily. Then to my new husband's London residence. The words felt surreal. Jenny, would you consider coming with me? As a lady's maid? The position would pay significantly better than here. The girl's eyes widened. You're serious, miss? Entirely. I'll need someone I trust, and you've always been kind. Caroline paused. Though I should warn you, the Duke has a reputation for being difficult. Begging your pardon, miss, but so does your aunt, and you never held that against her. Jenny's smile was shy, but genuine. I'd be honored. By morning, Caroline's life had been reduced to 3 trunks and a hat box. She hired a hack to transport everything to the Savoy, refusing to use Aunt Josephine's carriages. Jenny came with her, wide-eyed at the hotel's luxury. The suite Greystone had arranged was larger than Caroline's entire third-floor bedroom. Floor-length windows overlooked the Thames, and the furniture gleamed with recent polishing. A note waited on the writing desk. Installation allowance. Purchase what you require. Beneath it lay a bank draft for £500. Caroline sank into a chair, overwhelmed. In 3 weeks, she'd gone from overlooked spinster to duchess-to-be. She should feel triumphant. Instead, she felt terrified and strangely numb, as if she'd traded one form of imprisonment for another, merely exchanging her aunt's control for her husband's cold arrangement. Miss? Jenny held up a cream envelope embossed with the Greystone crest. This just arrived. Inside was an invitation, not a command, but a formal request written in a child's careful script. Dear Miss Hartley, Papa says you are to be my new mama. Would you please take tea with me tomorrow at 4 o'clock? I promise to behave nicely. Your friend, Isabel Thorne, age 7. Caroline traced the slightly crooked letters, imagining the small girl laboring over each word. At the bottom, in the Duke's decisive handwriting, Greystone House, Berkeley Square. I'll be absent. Political obligations. Take whatever time you require with Isabel. He was throwing her directly into assessment, she realized, testing whether she could manage his daughter without his interference. The thought should have annoyed her. Instead, it felt like a challenge she might actually win. Jenny, find me something appropriate for meeting a 7-year-old. Nothing too formal, nothing that will frighten her. Yes, Your Grace. I mean, miss. Sorry, miss. Caroline smiled despite her nerves. Practice now. You'll need to be comfortable with it in 3 weeks. That night, she lay awake in the unfamiliar luxury, listening to London's nighttime sounds through open windows. Somewhere across the city, the Duke of Greystone was probably working in his study, reviewing legislation or correspondence, barely thinking of the woman he'd acquired like a useful piece of furniture. And in Berkeley Square, a small girl was perhaps lying awake too, wondering what kind of stranger would soon claim the title of mother. Caroline closed her eyes and tried to imagine a future that didn't feel like careful strategy and negotiated terms. Nothing came, but perhaps that was honest, at least. Perhaps honesty was enough foundation to build something sustainable, if not warm. She'd know tomorrow when she met the child who'd inadvertently changed her entire life.